Those 11 original Icarian immigrants back in 1903 got together under difficult, adverse conditions in a strange land and somehow decided there was a need to form a brotherhood to help Icarians here in America. And that's remarkable because it had never been done before.
Well, to me, this is family. The Pan-Icarian is like a home away from home.
It's like we're a little family that everybody can be a part.
It gives you a place in the universe that you could always call home.
With Icarians, it's like everyone has the same blood and everyone has the same background, so it's like you can share that common ground.
I think forming the Icarian Club, we can go back and we can almost like scratch the soil of where our grandparents came from.
Yiayia was a poor place, and that their fathers and mothers really had a struggle. It was a struggle to survive.
Πολύ σκληρή στην Icarian.
At that time, don't forget, Icarian was part of the Ottoman Empire.
Under the Ottoman Empire, they couldn't even have a ladder to build a second floor to their houses.
Όλοι το ξέρουμε ότι η Icarian ήταν φτωχό νησί και από τα παλιά χρόνια οι άνθρωποι φεύγανε από εκεί.
What would happen to these young men, because many of them were being drafted to fight on the Ottoman side.
Icarians were leaving Icarian if they wanted a future to go either to Egypt or the luckier ones came here.
The very fact that they would take such a massive undertaking of leaving everything that they knew, everything that they were acquainted with, to go to someplace else to start fresh, I think was a Herculean effort.
That they had the guts to leave that island and come here it was the greatest thing.
The first big group came between 1895 and 1921 or 22.
Usually the migration patterns of Greeks is that there's some pioneer who comes to an area, writes home and says there's jobs here.
Those people, they have no families. Everybody came alone here just to work a little bit and come back.
You had to put down where you were going. You couldn't just say, here I am. You had to have an address of where you were going to stay when you're in the United States. And they often would put P.O. boxes in Verona. And they often mentioned specific individuals who must have, one way or the other, sponsored dozens or hundreds of people. In Pittsburgh, there was a Dimitrios Vasilaros who had a grocery store at 546 Fifth Avenue. And many Cariotes used his name and the address of that store as their destination.
It was a network to help the immigrants, the newly arrived immigrants, to try and give them a start in life.
Nastasha Diniaco had a business of painting. You know, everybody, they didn't know anything, so they'd go over there and work.
The Cariotes came here because some other individual was the first guy here, and he brought somebody else, and then they all came. The Cariotes were not attracted to the cold winters or to the dangerous working conditions, but they were jobs.
Στην αρχή ήταν δύσκολα, πολλά δύσκολα.
When an immigrant came to this country, he had great nerve. He couldn't speak English. He's probably very poorly educated in Greek.
Life for them, it was very hard. They live in a strange country that didn't know how to speak English.
When they came here, they found that they were not a very welcome group.
There was a lot of prejudice against the Greek immigrants. They were at the bottom, close to the bottom of the immigration change, and people didn't treat Greeks very well.
People thought of them as something different from what they were.
And they had one another to depend on. They lived in boarding houses together as they went on to these different jobs.
I remember those big apartment houses, they call them cellas.
And they had one room and they had one bed and they took turns sleeping on that bed.
This week you'll be the cook. The next week you'll be a dishwasher. The next week you go buy the groceries for the rest of them. They live like commune.
There's a sense of family, a sense of safety perhaps, a sense of support perhaps.
Η δουλειά ήταν σκληρή, αλλά είχαν απόδοση, από χρηματική απόδοση, από ζωή καλύτερη, τότες ήταν καλύτερα στην Αμερική. Γι' αυτό και μετά προσπαθούσαν και φέρναν ο ένας τον άλλο τους συγγενείς στην Αμερική.
It was a very hard, dangerous, dirty job, but they made money.
A lot of them got killed at work, highly dangerous conditions. Factories at the time had very little responsibility for the safety of their workers.
They did not have regular insurance. I mean, they could fall off a roof, which many of them did, and not have a family here to bury them. So they took care of one another.
Any immigrant who comes to this country, there's always a fear of not knowing the language, wanting to maintain the old and something that's familiar and comfortable.
But see, there were so few Cariotes, they stuck together like glue. They really did. It was really, they interacted like a family.
The people that were here, the immigrants, they had the wherewithal to understand that they had to form an association, a sort of brotherhood.
It started in 1903, as we know, out of Pittsburgh primarily.
It was a beneficial society intended to help the single fellas who were here alone.
When my grandfather got killed, John Levis, in Pittsburgh, he got killed there. That's where they started the Sílogo. Because at the time, the factories, they didn't have no insurance, no money, no any of those things.
There were no provisions for his burial. He was by himself. His family was in Icaria. Some of the other Icarians that were here decided to get together and collect a fund for his burial. There were no Greek cemeteries. There were no Greek churches. So he was buried in a Russian cemetery, and that was the start of the Icarian Brotherhood of America.
The Cariotes, they said to one another, we better get together, all of us, because we're on a strange land, strange people, and we better get together, all of us, to stick for one another.
The Cariotes especially refused any outside help. They wanted to help their own.
Icarians, they are independent people.
When they came to America or any other place or Canada, they didn't want any handouts. They wanted to contribute.
The Pan-Icarian Brotherhood was founded to give them a unity among their own people.
If it weren't for the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood, they wouldn't have had a support system here. You have to understand they left loving homes, they left in order to come to a country that offered them survival.
The Icarian Brotherhood, when it did finally get established in 1905, getting their charter from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, provided a whole series of benefits for its members. The dues were very substantial for the time, $3 to start with and 50 cents a month. It's a huge amount of money in 1905 dollars. They had about 270 members subscribed. They would provide a trip to Greece if they felt that was therapeutic for you, if you had a doctor's recommendation. If you got sick out of the area, they would provide for care in another state. It was really a corporation. It was like an insurance company. It wasn't anything like the Icarian clubs that we think of now.
The meetings were different. The meetings were run by a board of directors who met monthly, and the meetings weren't for the members.
And just like any corporation, there would be a stockholders meeting once a year. This was called the General Assembly. This is when all of the Icarian subscribers to the Icarian Brotherhood would get together and vote on a new slate of directors. They would pass bylaws. They would have ballots that they would vote on. And then, frankly, they wouldn't see each other for another year. The social aspect of the club was secondary.
And they had annual picnics and gatherings and things of that nature, but really the major reason why the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood existed at that point in time was to provide benefits for its members.
That generation, they were hardworking people. They were self-reliant.
I think it's a remarkable thing. When you think about it, in 1903, a group of Icarians decided this would be the last time somebody would die alone. A Cariote would be alone in North America. And from then on, no Cariote ever had to be alone as long as there was the Icarian Brotherhood and eventually the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood to help them out.
Ας σκεφτώ προ 100 χρόνια όταν οι πρώτοι Καριώτες είχαν το όνειρο στο 1903 να τιμάσουν Πανικαριακό σύλλογο, το Brotherhood, βγάζω το σκουφί μου και λέγω Θεός συγχωρέσει στα καλά τους έργα.
The Pan-Icarian Brotherhood is something that is a dynamic organization. It changes direction, becomes something different and more relevant as it goes forward.
I think that was one of the amazing things about the Icarians, is that they were able to adapt and change. What we are now is nothing like what the club started out to be.
The first Icarians got together, men mostly, to keep track of one another, to make sure that they were okay, and if they weren't okay, to help one another or bury somebody or something. But as they married and when they brought their wives, it became, it seems to me, more and more a social organization.
When they brought their families, they wanted to socialize, and they wanted their children to meet other young people, and they wanted to have broader social context.
As people had their own businesses and became more secure, it wasn't necessary to join a club to get death benefits. There were churches, there were other Greeks, there were other ways of getting these things that they needed.
The 1920s was a period of booming economy, and so the Icarians took advantage of this expanding economy. People were making money, they were doing really well. They'd been here for a few years, they were learning the language, they had some business instincts, and so they took advantage of a period of prosperity.
So the organization evolved into more of a social organization, not just to help themselves, but to start helping the island, which had been neglected under the Turks and frankly neglected under the Greeks as well.
For more than a generation, the Icarians were pretty much on their own. They had to pay taxes to Athens, but the Greek government didn't build roads, didn't invest scarcely anything in the school system, and the Icarians in Icaria fortunately had a large community in the States.
They realized they had to do something for the young people in Icaria to educate them as well.
I remember when my father was in the club, and it was they would send money to Greece, and they built a school.
One of the perhaps defining moments was they focused on building a high school on the island, which they started raising funds for in earnest.
They had their own families, a lot of them still there, and they knew that if they can't bring them here, at least they would give them something.
They raised an enormous amount of money, over $25,000, $1920.
That was known and very visible that this was the high school that was built by the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood.
Thousands of students came out of there educated. I was product of that high school. And it was strong, the education.
Because of the high school, too many Icarians, you know, it was easy for them to become what they are today.
But as the organization matured, they had trouble maintaining members. The Icarians from the Pittsburgh area started drifting and moving off into other parts of the country, specifically into eastern Ohio. There were Cariotes in New York. The Cariotes were everywhere. They were in Vancouver, they were in Victoria, Canada, there were fishermen in Seattle, Alaska, there were Cariote farmers in California, Galveston, Texas, places you wouldn't really think of having Greeks at the time. And it was hard to get them to maintain their memberships.
The Icarians wanted to form clubs outside of the Pittsburgh area, but the Pittsburgh Club, the Icarian Brotherhood in America, did not provide for chapters. It was not that type of corporation.
The organization was flawed in the sense that because it was a corporation providing benefits to members, they didn't need other chapters. They didn't want to establish chapters because that would meet competition. And when, for instance, the Cariotes of New York wanted to start their own chapter, they resisted. They didn't let them. It was resolved in a sense by several people in the Ohio area. Gus Herovis, who lived in the Akron area, and Yiayia-pappou.
Yiayia-pappou was a great promoter, a grand promoter, one of the top promoters of Yiayia-pappou that the society ever knew. And he kept it going even through bad times. So he felt that the Pan-Icarian society, or the Icaro, should be expanded so it would encompass all of the Icarians in the United States.
And he was very interesting. He was a brilliant person. He was a magnificent orator.
The newspapers would cover his speeches wherever he spoke. He spoke it in Congress. He spoke among senators.
Good lawyer, evidently, and totally dedicated to the concept of Hellenism, continuation of Hellenism in this country and in the English-speaking society.
In the early 1930s, Yiayia-pappou and Gus Herovis, recognizing that the Brotherhood didn't want to expand, started their own organization.
They call it in Greek
οι πότες και ladies της Ικαρίας, the knights and ladies of Ikaria.
That had the acronym KALOI.
Which stands in Greek for good. They refer to it as the righteous.
It had all the pomp and circumstance of the fraternal organizations of the day. They had these almost bombastic sounding titles for their officers. Chapters weren't called chapters, they were called castles. The headquarters was the Supreme Castle.
They wanted the expansion of the Pan-Icarian Society to all the states in the United States where Icarians were. So they had the concept, they had to have a charter established the way Yiayia-pappou was chartered on a national basis. And they went city to city, to the most populous areas of the Icarian populations, and presented that to them. I guess that time there was most mature the Icarians, they thought about we needed to be united, and that's when they started the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood.
Mid-1930s in Youngstown, Ohio, they called representatives of the Knights and Ladies of Icaria, the Icarian Brotherhood in Pittsburgh, and also of the Artemis Society to a meeting so that they could unite all of the different Icarian clubs. The Pittsburgh organization was leery of joining another group. They had a very substantial treasury. The records in the archive show at least $10,000. So they were afraid if they became part of some national group that they would lose control. Apparently, whatever feelings they had about that were assuaged, and they all joined together so that the Icarian Brotherhood in America, which is what the Pittsburgh group was called, became the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood of America. And that's another interesting shift, too, because Icarian Brotherhood in America meant that these were Icarians who just happened to live in America. By the 1930s, they saw themselves as part of America, so that they belonged here.
In 1934, I happened to be at Youngstown, where the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood was reinvigorated. It attracted a lot of people of my age, young generation, because they were starting to speak our language. They were starting to speak as much American as they did Greek. And this made us feel at home, made us feel that we were a part of it.
They really never expected to stay in this country. They always thought they would go back.
The Icarian experience has changed dramatically since the last 100 years. Certainly in the early years, one of privation and one of codependence. Maybe in the 1930s and 40s, perhaps more assimilation and more social in nature.
Then they started to provide for the American Icarians, the Icarians of the United States, the second generation.
You come here because you didn't know anywhere else to go. You came here if you wanted to find employment within the community. You came here because you needed a family, to be part of a family, a bigger family, because maybe you were here alone or not.
Social activities became a lot more pronounced too. There were more chapters, more picnics. People would travel from one picnic to another, very often bus loads and carloads of people from different communities would support other communities' picnics. There were dances. The original Icarian Brotherhood in America had completely changed from a group run by a board of directors into more of a consensual group where everyone would get together and there were social activities. So from then on, the organization has slowly, methodically grown. We've added chapter after chapter, year after year, bucking the trend of other Greek organizations, of other organizations as a whole, and we've expanded.
I can't imagine that they could look 70, 80, 90, 100 years in the future and envision what it's become and how much it's grown.
We do not rest on our laurels. We continue to work for the betterment of our brotherhood. Sure, we may squabble and have our differences, but at the same point in time, we are always an organization that looks to improve upon itself and tries to address the needs of the Icariotes here in the United States.
Government of the Brotherhood, it all starts with the Supreme Lodge. The Supreme Lodge consists of the national president, the vice president, secretary, treasurer, and counselor.
And basically what they do is they just administer the day-to-day functions of the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood, and to make sure between convention to the next convention everything's running fine, that we're having meetings throughout the United States and Canada during that year, and that we're doing what the Brotherhood says that we should be doing from one convention to the next. Whatever the convention says is the governing body of our Brotherhood.
After that group of executive officers, you have the governors. We have 6 governors who cover the entire territory of the U.S. and Canada.
What we want to really do is bring the entire community even closer together. Long gone are the days when the chapters were just in Ohio and Pittsburgh and on the East Coast. We have chapters in San Francisco, Wilmington, North Carolina, Clearwater, Houston. We want to get all of the chapters involved, and I think the way we do that is by encouraging their participation. And the way you encourage their participation is by visiting those chapters and trying to get them involved in the greater works of our Brotherhood.
Just the fact that they go to visit another chapter in Detroit, in Chicago, in Pittsburgh, they're bringing Icarians together, and they should be proud of that. And that's what their job is, bring Icarians together.
One of the most important aspects of the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood is the communications that we have between the chapters and the members. First and foremost, you have chapters themselves that have monthly communications to their members, and then the even greater aspect of it is the Yiayia magazine.
Those who started, say, this communication prior even to the magazine realized that communication was so essential to keep the Icarian community together.
Every issue of the Yiayia magazine, the chapters are strongly encouraged to send their chapter reports to the magazine about what they've done during the past few months since the last magazine issue came out. And that way different chapters can see what the other chapters are up to.
The Icarian magazine will tell you what's going on with everybody, everywhere that's Icarian in this country, that wants to be a part of this organization and wants to be a part of that community. And it'll give you their news.
It's almost an intimate sense of an extended family. And you do, because you somehow, you'll say, oh, I remember him. I was at that convention. My dad introduced me. Oh, look at his grandchildren. Oh, how sad that this person, and you feel for the family. If you've been exposed to, as a Gariotina or, all your life, that magazine just encompasses a little mini convention.
I think the growth of the Brotherhood is pretty much encouraged, by having this publication go out.
The Brotherhood is something that was created by our parents and grandparents, and they did the best that they could, knowing what they knew and with the resources that they had, and now it's up to this generation to continue their efforts and to keep it current for this early part of the 21st century. And it's important for us to hand it down to our children.
I feel proud I'm an Icarian because I am a special individual, I say. I know my history, I know where I come from, I know how I am part of this fabric that has been woven here in the United States.
Whenever you're involved in the Gariotico, you are welcomed with open arms. You could be away for 5 or 6 years and come back. You can transfer chapters from one chapter to another chapter. It is something that is always there for you. It is more than just paying your $25 dues. You are a Garioti by merely being a Garioti.
The bond that they created and the link with Icaria, lots of the kids feel it now also.
People have sacrificed so many things to make your life better and their children's life better. And we can't never forget that.
It is a wonderful organization to be in, not because of the organization, but because it is your family.
You can't push people to be the same. You can give them equal opportunity to forge ahead, but they need to have some foundation. They need to have some self-identity. And if they don't have that, they're not going to be able to move forward because they don't know who they are. And I think the Brotherhood helps us maintain that.
I think the nature of people, you need to be around people And people with your interests and backgrounds is usually what is the most interesting to you.
I grew up in a Cariotico house, like we say, okay? My mother and my father drew Icaria and Carioti into me until the point where I felt every Greek was a Carioti. I didn't know that there were other people.
I remember growing up always knowing I was an Icarian.
We never knew there was a difference between being Greek or Icarian. We just knew, we thought that was one thing. We thought everybody was Icarian.
But there are certain peculiarities of fellowship that comes from being an Icarian.
I like to think that there's something unique about maybe island Greeks and Cariotes in particular. I mean, we've always seen ourselves, a lot of Cariotes see themselves as being non-confrontational.
When you find the Cariotes, they don't tell you I'm from Athena, I'm from Icaria. And this identity you want to keep for the generations to come.
When you ask me what I am, I used to tell them I'm a Cariotina. I never said I was a Greek. I was always Cariotina. I never entered my mind to be anything else.
You have that feeling in you, you know, you can't lose it.
There is a tightness here that comes from almost being a transplanted village.
We've seen throughout the history of the Icarian Club cataclysmic collisions between different groups, yet they always manage to get together.
Μαλώνανε στα μύρις, γινόταν θα ούσους να σκοτωθούν. Και βγαίνανε έξω και αγκαλιαζόταν και πίνανε καφέ.
I've seen us at the conventions get up and argue and then leave arm in arm, loving each other and leaving the argument behind us and not taking it with us.
There was never a time where it escalated into bitterness and politics.
And even though we argue with one another, the Carioti, once the meeting is over, it's all done.
That's how the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood works, you know. No matter what, if you have a difference of opinion, you're still a friend, and when you go there, he's still your Icarian brother or sister. And I think that's the main reason that they survive for so many years.
I think it's something about our nature that makes us want peace, to want to get together. We're consensus builders.
It doesn't make any difference where you're from. They take you in, they assimilate you. They make you a Carioti.
They all know you. They know you from your grandparents, your great-grandparents, all the way back. So, you know, you can relax with them. They don't expect anything more from you than your love and your appreciation of them.
I can start a conversation with Carioti and go back 200 years to grandmothers and grandfathers, and it's there, the subject are there.
It means something to me to come in here and know that this brother or this sister here was from Kiparisi, and the other one was from Edivon, and this and that, and we had something in common.
You meet somebody and then you find out what village their heritage is from, and you say, I know that village, and then you talk about that person, and do you know that person that lives in that village, or do you know the Cafanillo over there? I mean, all this extends, and you just feel like, oh, wow, I know exactly where his roots are from.
You have a 200 family, extended family all of a sudden. And that's been one of the greatest things I think this organization provides.
A fellow Icarian would be just like considering them like a brother or a sister.
We didn't have a holiday that we didn't have neighbors for Christmas, for Easter, we always had a full table.
We didn't have the neighborhood as such with all the patriotas. You would have felt like an outsider.
Surrounding me within a 1-mile radius were numerous aunts and uncles and cousins. So if we weren't at the Lesky, we'd be at an aunt or uncle's house.
I grew up in Chicago, surrounded by lots of aunts and uncles and cousins, Icarians.
And by the time I was a child in the 1960s, there were probably 200 families living in the area. So it was, you saw Icarians in the street, you saw them at the markets, you bumped into them at the train stations, you saw them in each other's houses where you frequently went visiting.
You were accepted instantly. There was never this thing of trying to work your way into a crowd. They were your cousins.
What I remember from my childhood and growing up is that there was that tightness of family, that it was not only in this family but the greater family of the Icarians that you knew, and blossoming outwards through the chapter, through Icarians that you knew nationwide?
There is a spirit of the Icarians, and that comes to life in many ways. And how you speak to each other, how you treat each other, how you can sit down and have a meal with each other.
You go to their home, katse, diafas, tutor. You know, this is what we call Icariaki philoxenia. It's something I never got out of my system.
Philoxenia is a big thing for the Cariotas. Because, you know, they used to have the extra plate for the musafiri, they call it. The Cariotas, when they set up a table, they always left an extra plate. They set up an extra plate for the musafiri, just in case somebody came. Well, here we don't do it that way, but we always have more food than anybody needs, you know.
Usually in a lot of cultures, I think they try to ignore children, but in the Icarian culture, child comes in the room, they're usually the center of attraction. And it still is to this day, I think, in a lot of Icarian families.
I'm privileged to be part of a social network where people have close proximity to each other, where they love each other, where they know each other, where they care for each other.
The sense of your beginnings, this kind of thing that just, that becomes a part of your soul.
It's in your blood. It's something that you have a need, a feeling to be with others. It's almost like the Holy Spirit. When you're with a bunch of Cariotas from other parts of the country, it's just something that comes out, and it's something that is very special.
After the fall of the Athenian Empire in the 4th century BC, the island gradually declined and it virtually became cut off from the rest of the world for almost 1,000 years. So the Icarians, as a result of being isolated, developed a rather unique culture.
I really think the fact of it is the Cariotas have a unique love for humanity.
We were a small island on the Aegean Sea, relatively isolated from the rest of the world.
The island was never really a part of Greece. We were always shoved away from Greece. And we had to organize. We had to become an island. We had to become sort of a people.
And because of the dreams that we had to become something. We have to create something for our life.
To be able to liberate themselves and to actually form a country for 4 months or however long it was indicates that the character of the people there is extremely strong and very united and cohesive.
Life on the island was such an incredible struggle for them. And anybody who showed any tiny bit of kindness to them, they would just, be so appreciative of it. They would just, try to show kindness to others.
This island is so rugged. It's extremely rugged in comparison to other islands. And the fact that most of the men, and my father was 10 years old when he started going out on ships, and so were a lot of other people, they had to go away from their home in order to be able to make enough money or to bring goods back to the family.
Icarian fathers are tremendously hardworking. Everybody has an Icarian father who used to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, 4:30 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work tremendously hard, come home, and be with their families. They are the greatest fathers in the world, I think, Icarian fathers.
They were special people.
Working towards one goal, a family, keeping the family together, I think is very important. And I think they all had that ability to do that. And I think that's what's kept things going. The Icarian character is very strong in that respect.
I think Icarian women are very strong because of the fact that their husbands had to leave and go across oceans to make livings, even go to Athens, some of them, and they had to stay. And they had to take care of the families. They had to direct them in all aspects of their life, their religion, their socialization, their value system.
The Icarian women have extremely strong characters. They have extremely strong sense of family.
Because I remember one time my mother told me, Sarando, look something. You come in this world not just to live your life. You come in this world to work for
for the life which is going to come in the next generation. So try to do something, try to accomplish something.
I remember after the Second World War, we got huge boxes that we filled with food that would not spoil, clothing, and we sent it down.
Whatever bit of clothing that some lady in Greece got because she had a couple of young children, babies and whatever, that they got clothes from the United States and they thought it was a wonderful thing.
I've always felt myself to be among kindred spirits in being, for instance, very open and inclusive with women. That's not usual in Greek culture.
The women are becoming more involved in the leadership roles of the Pan-Icarians, both locally and nationally.
It's to give of yourself something, you know, for the progress of our society, because we all know we're a philanthropic society.
Being in the Brotherhood does affect your values for the better, obviously. And the reason why it does it is because it gives you a sense of community, gives you a sense of what your roots are, and it makes you want to become a better person too, to realize the sacrifice that these people, your forefathers, have put in before you in terms of succeeding in the United States.
We are people who have compassion, we have intelligence, we acknowledge the worth of less fortunate, we acknowledge the love that we have for one another.
We have two cultures to draw from. It makes us, give us a better perspective, makes us more rounded. We draw from both.
The love of the island is symbolic as the love for Hellenism is symbolic. You must have it in your heart. You must be a Greek. You must be a Hellene. To be a Hellene means to love knowledge, to love morality, to love God, to love the world that we're in, and to hope to give to others the love that you feel for your own immediate family and for your island people.
So our values are characterized, if you will, by our love for that island of Icaria and our love for our own Icarian people, and a very strong, I would say, desire to move on and advance in our life.
The foundation really is the purpose of the Brotherhood, because the aims of the foundation are the aims of the Brotherhood.
The foundation, it's another rallying point of the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood.
When people ask me about being an Icarian, I say that the most wonderful thing is that the foundation, you can't believe the money that this group raises, the foundation raises for good charities.
Το foundation είναι η πόρτα για το organization.
The foundation role is basically educational, cultural, and charitable.
When somebody's house burns down, you know, it's like the farmers out in Iowa, you know, you help them build another barn.
Βοηθάνε παιδάκια, βοηθάνε φτωχούς, έχουν φέρει παιδάκια άρρωστα εδώ και τα κοιτάζουν.
Από την αρχή του αιώνα που ερχόταν εδώ στην Αμερική, είχαν να σμίγουν μαζί, να ιδρύσουν την Πανικαριακή για να βοηθάνε άλλους ανθρώπους οι οποίοι δεν είχαν.
Our mission is to work as hard as we can, raise money as much as we can to fund people that unfortunately are in dire need.
Through the foundation, we're able to disseminate and help all the Icarian and other people that have need.
Ό,τι χρήματα έρχονται μέσα και από τα κομπέσια και από το ένα τ' άλλο που έρχονται μέσα δεν πληρώνουν φόρους.
One thing we knew that in order to be able to receive contributions, we had to have a vehicle that would be recognized by the government, would be tax deductible for any donations that would be made to the foundation, and therefore by that deduction and that IRS benefit, we were able to try to convince people that maybe they should give money to the foundation.
Enable us to reach goals that were unattainable before.
The foundation was started in '65.
Somebody had to go around and talk to people and enlighten people, inform people, and so they can accept it.
Η ώρα που ξεκίνησε ο Πασαδέλης, ο πρώτος πρόεδρος του Φαντασίου, ο πρώτος, εδώ είχε έρθει τουλάχιστον 4 και 5 φορές για να βάλει στο μυαλό τους να το καταλάβουν τι ήτανε, τι θα πει Foundation.
Luis Pasadelis, coming out, one day he made me cry.
He helped a lot of sick children from Greece at the time that they couldn't have the treatment that the guy here could not have it there.
At that particular time, the main emphasis were bringing kids over from Greece for medical reasons.
I remember the first young man, Stamulo, when he came for his heart operation in New York. Everybody chipped in.
And he's now thriving. He's got his own business. He's no problem. And he remembers as a little kid that they took him over to the United States and they helped him, and he would have never survived.
One of the key things, of course, is to be able to not only help the children, but to be able to help the hospital in Icarian.
The hospital was again erected by monies that were gathered by the Americans.
They knew that many of their loved ones that were there would get sick and would never make it to Athens, to the hospitals, or to go to Samos many times when the weather is bad. They couldn't put them in boats to go anywhere because the boats weren't moving.
If you don't have it there, you have to go to Samos. By the time you get to Samos, you could drop dead.
A lot of lives were saved because of this hospital.
The high school in Icaria was built by the Icarians. Roads, waters, schools, other schools that were built by the Brotherhood or by individuals.
We built it on the island because it wasn't there.
Well, the greatest contribution is that we never disconnected ourselves from our mother land over there, Icaria and Hellas.
I can see, and rightfully so, the foundation now being more attentive to our own needs as American Icarians, and less, because the need is less, turning over to Icaria and continuing what they used to do for many, many years.
What we strongly support now are the scholarships for students here in the States as well as in Icaria.
We cross the ocean. We don't care if it's for kids here or Greece. We don't care if it's undergraduate or graduate work. If somebody has a need and they want to learn, we make sure we do our best to provide for it.
It's something that is there in perpetuity. It is a way of helping those who need it, and also a way, scholarship-wise, most of them are for merit scholarships.
Education is, I guess, the number one investment you can make.
Scholarships are very important, just to bring the young generation in here.
Steve Manners was a perfect example of a scholarship recipient getting the help when he needed it the most, understanding that, knowing that they, could have chosen anybody else. I mean, there were hundreds of applicants. And he appreciated that. And, he did what he was supposed to do. He paid it back. He came to work for the chapter. He loved working for the chapter. He did come up with the golf outing that's like an amazing tradition now. It's grown from the first 30 people that's played to, 120 people. And it's a great tradition. Raises money. He was involved with the Pittsburgh Convention back in '79. He paid his dues. And that's what I think is important when these people get the scholarships and everything, that they got to come back and pay their dues. And I'm not talking about working forever, but just come back. Just come back. Remember where they came from.
If you start somebody young, if you invest in time and educating them and teaching them the right way, it can only bring positive results.
There seems to be running through our veins this incredible drive of love for humanity and wanting to help whenever we can.
And I thought to myself, if I can help somebody in my lifetime, at least one person, I will have, done well. When I was growing up in Wilmington, North Carolina, I was on somebody else's back. They helped me. It's my time to help somebody else. And that's the attitude you have to take. You can't say, well, it's none of my business, so I'm not going to help this. I'm not going to. Somewhere along the line, you and everybody else rode on somebody else's back. Let's help.
Imagine if you were able to have a family reunion every year for 100 years. How close that would make your family.
Εδώ έτσι λένε, ο Καριώτης πως όπου πάει μέσα σε 1,000 people θα κοιτάξει να βρει Καριώτη να κάνει παρέα.
If you cook food, the Cariotes will show up.
We used to go to Verona for Labor Day weekends. You go to somebody's, one guy was a farmer, he had a farm.
Those picnics, long time ago, they had a meaning. Somehow, I mean, they were really something. And they would be like brothers and sisters, all of them.
There were two important events growing up. One was the Icarian Convention, and one was the Icarian Picnic here in Warren. We got new outfits at least twice a year. One was for the convention, and one was for the picnic.
Coming from Detroit, either rent bus or cars, and stayed a day and back.
Those early conventions, as I remember them, they were like a close-knit family. Everybody knew everyone.
I mean, it's not a convention of a club. It's a big family reunion. Everybody knows each other. And we haven't seen each other for a while. And it's easy to sit down and just pick up where you left off, you know, as if it was yesterday.
There was always a warmth coming to the Icarian conventions. And even a young child would remember.
My sisters and I come away, we're hoarse for 3 days because we've been talking nonstop to relatives we haven't seen, you know, people we haven't seen, and visiting with everybody. It's a family reunion is what it boils down to.
We never slept. We roamed around all night.
And the rules were, you're not allowed to go outside, you don't have to go to bed, you don't have to do anything, but you can, as long as you stay inside the hotel, go meet everybody.
If you come to our convention, you see a lot of youth dancing and associating with each other, and yes, falling in love with each other. Quite a lot.
Many people met their future wives and husbands through the organization and so on, and I'm sure that was one of the intentions.
It was for social purposes, primarily to promote endogamy, marriage within a group of people.
At the age when I really enjoyed the conventions were to meet a nice young girl that finally you'd have a few more Icarians. And I'm sure it hasn't changed even today.
I mean, we used to look forward to the conventions to meet people, to meet girls, to meet our friends, you know, and I mean, you know, all our parents wanted us to quote, find a nice Cariotina, you know, and get married. And
every Icarian looked forward to getting together and meeting all their friends and their relatives at the Icarian convention every year.
We made a point to get to those conventions. The kids, I mean, that was the highlight of their year.
Get your kids to the convention as soon as they can walk. That's where they meet the other kids. Then they're looking forward for the next year. Hey, I got a lot of friends I met last year in Cleveland, in Pittsburgh, in Detroit. I'm going to see them again.
I'd make new friends each year and catch up with the ones I made from the previous years. And I still stay in contact with a lot of them.
Just for my own kids, I think they enjoy it. I think they get to meet new people, friends, they make friendships, they make cousins that otherwise will never see. And I think it enriches his life. It makes him a part of something.
There has not been a convention that any of us have ever gone to that we don't meet another relative.
I got to meet people who had the same ethima, if you will, customs, and I didn't have to say much. Everybody kind of knew, and that makes it easy. That makes it easy to be comfortable and then to be able to talk to people.
We didn't have to go through all of those other steps that you go through in developing a friendship.
Even if you don't know someone and you just become friends at a convention, you're kind of automatically friends. That weekend, you can become best friends just like that.
To me, it was like being with my family, going to the Icarian conventions.
It wasn't an organization I was going to.
This is really the jewel that we have, the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood, that convention. You know, I taught school for many years, and if I ever found a student who was troubled, it was one who didn't know his roots, who didn't understand his beginning.
At the dinner table, my father spoke of Icarian, and we knew every crack and cranny. We knew which tree was broken. We knew which scalopati ithele di orthoma. We knew all of that. We knew all his horiani by virtue of the fact of storytelling.
They would talk about the Horio, especially Karkinagri, and they would talk about it, and we would sit and listen to their stories and about this, that, and the other. And about 25, 30 years later, we had the first chance to go. And when I went to the Horio, it was as if I had known it, almost rock by rock, because of all the stories they had said.
I don't know quite what the magic is. I don't know how it transpired, but the second my children saw their grandfather's house, saw their grandmother's house in Pan-Icarian, saw my wife's grandmother's house in Ayuspandelemonas, and saw where everybody before them came from, they became instantly rooted Icarians.
We all seem to go back to Icarian at least, you know, and regenerate ourselves, you know, our Icarian heritage somehow.
I have to go back once a year. It's like salmon going upstream. I need to go back and get grounded.
I think this thing of going back every year or every other year is really what makes this bond strong.
I think a lot of it comes from the fact of going to Icarian and one person telling the other and trying to meet there to see each other. It's like a reunion for them.
Hooking up with a couple guys that apparently had caught the same fever that I caught, because it was a group of guys that were from all over the United States.
I mean, you see our youth every summer going to Icarian in the greatest numbers. They meet there, they become friends, they come over here, and the next thing that they meet again is the Pan-Icarian convention.
You could see the Detroiters, you could see the Californians, you could see the Carolinians, you could see the Pittsburghers in Icarian, and have basically a 1 month long convention with each other.
For when we were younger, we'd have ski trips with the States, and then you'd go to Icarian, and it would be the same gang, so it was a nice bond.
These were all people that were of Icarian descent, and they went to their island, they went to their villages, and we all met there.
When I started going to Icarian, and I started meeting other Icarians from other cities, started going to conventions, that's when it became more important in my life. And I made lifelong friendships from going to those conventions and going to Icarian.
We were all Icarian offspring, and we all had the same intentions growing up, and we had the same similar lifestyles growing up, and we probably ate the same foods, and we probably had the same type of you know, functions to go to. So we were so similar that the friendship was already elevated like 10 levels. We didn't have to go through this maturing process of being friends. We were at level 10 right off the bat, and then we hit the ground running.
It was just absolutely wonderful being able to explore the island together, being able to go up to each other's grandparents' old home, whether it was a functioning home or not, to be able to ask questions of each other about how it must have been back in the old days.
It's nothing like going there to see where your grandfather, your great-grandfather came from, how they lived, to see the physical beauties of Icarian.
I want to share that with others, and I think that's why I want the Brotherhood to continue. I want to have exchange programs where kids who can't go back and see these roots go back.
And that's why I still think it's important for young people, if the foundation or groups still send their kids to Icarian and promote going to Icarian, this is a way for young people to get together.
Once they go back and see this, they understand. It's kind of something that we all understand without being able to verbalize.
As we plan for the next century, the first thing is we got to keep our membership growing.
A social network requires somebody's commitment. It requires, you know, getting out of bed on that particular day and showing up at meetings and showing up at the dances, supporting those types of network. A social network is exactly that. It cannot exist without the participation and commitment of people.
To continue to grow, the chapters have to get out there and communicate with their members who have stopped coming to meetings and get them to rejoin. Getting those young people to join, maybe finding ways to make the Brotherhood more youth-friendly.
I think we need to really focus on instilling in each generation, each coming generation, even if it has a new face, and it is, as Hutrita said, even if it is O'Brien's and Moran's and not Pamphilus's and not Lardis's, how do we instill the essence of the beauty of what we have, this unique little group of people who are still together after 100 years.
The number one priority is the incorporation of the youth into the Pan-Icarian Brotherhood.
Whether from the teens to the 30s, do have a sense of belonging, and they want to carry it on and make some goals for themselves and change goals.
It's extremely vital that they develop the same type of love that the older members share for Icarian, for each other as a fraternity. I think that's the only way that we're going to be able to keep our individuality in a nation that is so diverse.
When I come to these meetings, a lot of the majority of our people are older. And that's not bad, but you know what happens when their generation is out, then we hardly have any new people. And I think that it's very important for the younger people to get involved.
Yeah, I think it's the youth that's going to be the individuals that are actually going to take this to the next level, because they can't. The older generation is going to come to a point where they're not going to be able to, do anymore. Not because it's just going to. Again, it's time to pass on the torch.
As my father got older and we got more involved in the organization, he said, "Okay, Tori, it's your turn."
The best thing that we can do to the young folks right now is give them a position of responsibility.
Take the youth and put them inside the executive board of the main chapter. Because once you get them involved in the bigger picture, then there's no going back.
The kids took over and running the club. The presidents, the officers, they having dances, the collective money. And now all those kids grew up and they have kids. And you see now, you go to our club in Detroit, and you see nothing but young people.
Κάλεσα τα καρβιτάκια εδώ πέρα όλα. Δεν ζευτήκαν καμιά τριανταριά. Λέω, παιδιά, αυτά είναι τα κλειδιά του κτηρίου. Θέλετε να το κρεμίσετε, μπορείτε να το κρεμίσετε. Θέλετε να το χτίσετε, μπορείτε να το χτίσετε. Είναι δικό σας.
One of the things that was successful is telling the youth, here's the keys to the club. It's your club, you're responsible for it, do whatever you want.
You have a say. You don't get, not everybody has a say in life.
Θα δώσουμε στα παιδιά την προτεραιότητα να μπουν μέσα και εμείς απ' έξω να παρακολουθάμε και αν χρειάζονται τη συμβουλή μας να το συντείναμε.
We actually work together. It's amazing that you'll see younger people as well as much older people, the gamut of 2 or 3 generations.
We have to come up with more programs to attract the new generation to come to Leski, not for social reasons, but for any other thing, something to do with their kids, like a daycare program.
Have some goals, some activities. That, at least to me, was what kept me interested in going.
On Friday nights and have it like a little cafe night, like a little cafeteria, where people can come here and play tavli, drink some coffee, and pool. So it was a good central meeting point.
All you have to do is say, "Oh, we're having a meeting at the Leski," and you have a parking lot full of the youth because they all want to come hang out with each other.
See, now they're starting to, and they see results. And once they see results, hey, we're going to continue. And that's what I hope that we can do.
We need to continue that process in all the chapters, and also at the Supreme Lodge level.
I think we're going to be a better organization because we have a good interest in our young people. They're interested.
So I would say to people in 100 years from now, if you are still in the same position, if you still have the same passion for Icarian, you still have the same passion for your family and your forefathers, that just continue to be involved in this organization.
If we've made it to you, then you know what you have to do, so we're handing you the key to make it available in 200 years to the next generation.
Keep your heritage, keep your culture, keep your faith. That's exactly what I'd say.
If they would read between the lines, they should be able to see that we are not leaving material wealth, we're not leaving new skyscrapers or statues, but we have left a feeling of love, a feeling of belonging, a feeling of brotherhood.
They look carefully, they will find that in this past millennium that they're looking at, or this last 100 years, they'll find that there was a group of people that enjoyed themselves, that helped themselves, that lived quality lives within the United States and enjoyed the warmth and fellowship of their brother Greeks and added something to the community they were living in.
It kind of gives you a sense of pride, and I feel lucky myself, you know, to be brought up this way, you know, with such a deep heritage, you know, and being Icarian.
The connection's there, whether it's in 1880 or 1980 or 2080. It's still there. And a connection is not just land, it's also blood.
Icarian is in our blood. It just flows through our veins.
If there's 100% Greek blood in you, as long as the Pan-Icarian Club continues, there will be this sense of family.